Have you ever met someone who thought they could control everything around them, including your own private life? Imagine buying your dream cabin in the woods, only to find out that your neighbor, the so-called Karen, believes she owns not just her house, but the entire neighborhood. That's exactly what happened to me. And trust me, what started with a few for sale signs on my property turned into one of the most unbelievable twists of my life. When I first bought the cabin, I thought I had found peace. A little place away from the city, surrounded by tall trees, clean air, and silence broken only by birdsong. The cabin wasn't fancy, but it was mine. It felt like freedom. But what I didn't know was that freedom would soon be tested by the most controlling person I had ever met, my neighbor, the HOA Karen. Now, I didn't even know there was an HOA here at first. When I signed the paperwork, the realtor told me the cabin wasn't technically part of their association. My cabin was just outside their boundary lines. I thought, perfect. I don't need rules about how long my grass should be or what color my door has to stay. I just wanted to enjoy my weekends fishing, hiking, and maybe hosting a barbecue now and then. But Karen didn't see it that way. She showed up on my porch the very first week, clipboard in hand, sunglasses covering half her face, and a voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You can't park your truck here," she snapped. "This neighborhood has standards." I blinked at her. "Ma'am, I think you're mistaken. My cabin isn't part of the HOA. Her lips curled like I had just told her the moon was made of cheese. Everything here is under HOA rules. And as long as I'm the president, everyone follows them. I laughed nervously. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be the last time I saw her. At first, her antics were small. She'd leave notes on my door saying things like, "Your grass is too long," or "Your curtains don't match the community aesthetic." Sometimes, I'd find my trash bins moved from where I had left them. Other times, she would glare at my guests like we were criminals. Then one morning, I walked outside and saw something that made my blood boil. A big, bold, red and white sign hammered into the ground at the edge of my property. "For sale, contact HOA." For a second, I thought maybe I was imagining it. My cabin wasn't for sale. I hadn't listed it. I hadn't spoken to any agents, and I certainly hadn't given permission for anyone to advertise my land. Yet, here was this giant sign telling the world otherwise. I stormed over to Karen's house, knocked on the door, and when she opened it, I held up the sign like a weapon. "What is this?" I demanded. She didn't even flinch. "I decided your cabin doesn't fit the neighborhood. It lowers property values. It's better if someone else buys it. So I put up for sale." I was stunned. Who does that? Who wakes up one morning and decide they can just sell your house without your permission? I pulled the sign out of the ground and said firmly, "This is illegal. If you ever put another sign on my property, I'll call the police." Her smile was thin and cold. "You'll regret crossing me," she whispered. And then she slammed the door. I thought that was the end of it. But Karen wasn't the kind of person to back down. Over the next few weeks, the signs kept coming back. Every time I removed one, another appeared, sometimes overnight, sometimes during the day when I was at work. She acted like my property belonged to her HOA, and no matter how many times I told her the truth, she refused to listen. The breaking point came one evening when I returned from fishing. There were 3 for sale signs on my property this time. 3. It was like she was trying to flood the market with my home. That night, I sat in my cabin, staring at those signs lying on the floor, and I realized something. Karen wasn't just annoying. She was dangerous. She believed her rules were more important than the law, and she wasn't going to stop until she got her way. So I decided to flip the script. Instead of fighting her head-on, I started watching her. I learned her patterns. Every morning, she went out for a walk around the neighborhood, inspecting other people's homes, sometimes even peeking into their yards. Every afternoon, she sat in her living room, sipping coffee and spying through her window. And every weekend, she hosted HOA meetings in her dining room, where I could hear her voice barking orders through the open windows. And then I overheard something that changed everything. One Saturday, as I was walking by, I caught part of her conversation. She was complaining about how much money it cost to keep her house running. Her husband had passed away years ago, and her finances weren't as strong as she wanted the neighbors to believe. I heard her say, if only someone would buy this place, then I could finally move to Florida. A plan began forming in my head. If Karen was so eager to sell houses that didn't belong to her, maybe it was time she learned what it felt like when the tables turned. I contacted a local real estate agent, not for my cabin, but for hers. I asked about Karen's property, pretending to be a potential buyer. To my surprise, the agent told me her house was listed. Quietly, privately, and probably out of desperation, Karen had already put her home on the market. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I had the money, I had the motivation, and I had the patience to pull this off. If Karen wanted me gone so badly, maybe I'd just become her landlord instead. But before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever faced someone who tried to control your life, even when they had no right to? How did you deal with it? Because sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling, fighting, or arguing. Sometimes the best revenge is outsmarting them completely. Stick around, because in the next part of this story, I'll tell you how I went from being Karen's target to becoming the owner of her house. Do you know the sweet sound of silence after a storm? That's exactly what I felt the moment I realized the tables had finally turned on Karen. For months, she had been obsessed with trying to drive me out of my cabin. But now, I had something she didn't. Patience, leverage, and the perfect opportunity to hit her where it hurt most. Remember how I said her life wasn't as perfect as she pretended? Well, behind the curtain of her Queen of the HOA act, she was falling apart. Her finances were crumbling. That big fancy house she bragged about at every community meeting, it was slipping away inch by inch because she couldn't keep up with her mortgage. And the best part? Nobody in the neighborhood knew. She wore a mask of control so well that even her closest allies believed she was untouchable. But the truth was, her kingdom was built on sand, and the tide was rising fast. Now here's where my plan came in. While she was busy putting fake for sale signs on my cabin, I was quietly watching the real for sale sign appear on hers. And when it did, I knew my chance had come. The first time I saw that little white sign on her lawn, I almost laughed out loud. Oh, the irony! The woman who tried to convince everyone my cabin was on the market now had her own home up for grabs. Karma doesn't just knock. It slams the door in your face. But I didn't rush. I played it smart. I acted like I didn't notice. I let her keep bragging, keep throwing shade, keep pretending she was in control. Meanwhile, I was already talking to the realtor. I was already running the numbers. I was already planning my move. And let me tell you, nothing tastes sweeter than knowing the person who wanted to ruin you has unknowingly set the stage for their own downfall. A few weeks later, everything lined up. I signed the papers. I transferred the funds. And just like that, I became the legal owner of the one thing Karen valued most, her house. When the deal was finalized, I sat in my car holding the keys, and I couldn't stop smiling. This wasn't just about property. This was about victory. This was about showing her that no matter how loud, how controlling, or how cruel someone is, they are not invincible. The day she found out, I'll never forget her face. She stormed into my driveway, clutching one of her fake HOA letters like it was a weapon. You think you're smart? She spat. You think you've won? I didn't even argue. I simply held up the keys to her house. No, Karen, I said calmly. I don't think I've won. I know I have. Her jaw dropped. Her face turned red. For the first time, she had no words. And let me tell you, silencing Karen was a miracle on its own. But this wasn't just about humiliating her. It was about teaching her a lesson that no one, no matter how entitled, has the right to bully, control, or steal someone else's peace. She wanted me out, but in the end, she was the one packing boxes. She wanted me to sell, but in the end, she was the one forced to move. She wanted to claim victory, but in the end, she handed it to me on a silver platter. Do you see the power of patience? Of not letting anger dictate your moves? She expected me to fight her in the streets, scream at meetings, or crumble under her fake fines. Instead, I let her arrogance blind her while I prepared the final blow. And know how hard that blow landed. Now, I won't pretend this story is just about revenge. It's bigger than that. It's about standing up for yourself when someone tries to take away your freedom. It's about refusing to let a bully dictate your life. It's about proving that the quiet strength of patience can outlast the loudest noise of arrogance. Because in the end, she lost not only her house, but also her power. The moment she left, the neighborhood breathed easier. People who had been scared to speak up against her finally found their voices. It was like a shadow had lifted, and the sun finally came through. And as for me, I kept my cabin. I kept my peace. And I kept the satisfaction of knowing that I didn't just survive her attacks. I turned them into the very reason she fell. So here's the truth I learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting, arguing, or even fighting. Sometimes the best revenge is patience, strategy, and letting karma do its work while you wait for the right moment to act. Karen wanted control. She lost it. Karen wanted power. She lost it. Karen wanted me gone. Instead, she's the one who disappeared. And that's the beauty of it all. Backhand index pointing right. So if you've ever dealt with someone who thought they could control your life, let this story remind you. Bullies don't win forever. Stay patient. Stay strong. And when the time is right, let your victory speak louder than their noise. Because trust me, nothing feels better than watching the one who tried to destroy you end up destroyed by their own arrogance.